All right, how's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Forward Thinking Founders, where we talk to founders about their companies, their visions of the future, and how the two collide. Today, I'm very excited to be talking to Jehron Petty, who is the founder of Colorstack. Welcome to the show. How is it going?
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you coming on and looking forward to diving into more about Colorstack. For people that don't know what you're working on or don't know what Colorstack is, can you tell us what it is?
For sure, Colorstack is a nonprofit organization recently founded to increase the entrance, retention, and success of Black and Latinx students pursuing computer science and computer science related majors.
Awesome. So would love to dive into actually before we talk about how it works and like how someone can get involved in that capacity, would love to hear a little bit about why you wanted to start it, why computer science, just a little bit of the origin story would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, for sure. So to make it brief, so I studied computer science at Cornell. I actually graduated about a week ago. And
Congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you so much. Um, so yeah, so as when I got to Cornell, it was a very interesting experience because I grew up in a very mixed area in New York and didn't really feel isolated because of my skin color or my race or anything like that. While acknowledging the fact that there's a history in America and just definitely some diversity issues. So when I got to Cornell, that was the first time where I was like in a classroom and I was like the only Black student, right? And that was my first time, feeling like I didn't belong or feeling that imposter syndrome. And so once I got my first internship after freshman year, um, that's when I realized that it was bigger than just Cornell. It was kind of an industry problem. This opportunity, the opportunities that I was receiving, not many other folks in my community were receiving. And so I worked to build. I invested my own time into supporting students through mentorship and just preparation, uh, and then found an organization on campus that was growing and kind of helped them accelerate their growth to really address retention issues at Cornell. So grew that organization from 15 members to over 200 now. We have almost 300 actually at this point. And just found that a lot of stakeholders, key stakeholders around the tech ecosystem needed this thing to exist at scale. And so, the origin of Colorstack was basically we built something amazing and valuable at Cornell that changed a lot of lives and will provide value to a lot of stakeholders like the schools and companies and professionals. And so Colorstack is scaling that across the country.
So would love to talk a little bit about what makes up Color Stack. So if someone wanted to get involved, are there events? Is there online networking? Is it mentoring? Is it something else
Yeah.
completely? Is it all of that? Can you kind of go into what's the experience of someone that gets involved with Color Stack?
Yeah, for sure. So from the student perspective, that's who we're serving mainly. They're gonna get involved on campus. So we have this natural community, and any student on any campus can join. But our real value add is our student-led chapters. And so, what a student-led chapter is just a student-led club, as any other club on a campus would look like. But we have a huge focus on student leadership and empowering students and really teaching students how to be leaders. I know, like on campus nowadays, it's kind of like how many roles can you kind of put on your resume, and extracurriculars are kind of not as serious as you want them to be, and they're very cyclic in terms of their impact because students come in and out of leadership roles. But we want to focus really on teaching students how to lead and not having it just be a role that you put on your resume, because the work that you do is very transformative. And we've seen the impact that it has at Cornell. So from the nonprofit side, what we provide to these students is that support on how to lead and be transformed on their campus, be advocates for their community, and really bring about the change that we want. We don't want to just bring these students together. We want to bring them together and identify and address the key issues that are preventing students from entering the major and succeeding in the major. Um, and in addition to that, we try to plug in companies and professionals as well. so professionals can engage through mentorship. We have a group mentorship program that we're launching this summer. And from the company perspective, we are just helping them do what they already do on campuses. When it comes to university recruitment, we're just working with them to be a little more creative in targeting this specific group.
Got it. That all makes a lot of sense, and it sounds incredible. I'd love to. Something else that a feeling that I'm kind of intimate with is the feeling of like just starting something new and just getting something off of the ground, and and then
Mhm.
the feeling of that. And obviously, this is something extremely special, and will have serious impact. But I want to kind of go over, how do you feel just getting off of the ground? Like I guess, why did you decide to start exactly when you started? And
Right.
what was it like to get this nonprofit off the ground? What were some of the things that you learned? What were some unexpected things that happened? It's just so
Mhm.
rare you get to capture the almost the founding of an organization. So we'd love to hear like your experience with that, as it's something that recently happened.
Right. So in terms of like why now and just all the timing, I actually wasn't planning on doing this a year ago. A year ago I was ending my first semester as the co-president of the org URMC at Cornell, where this idea was kind of born out of. And that was the first semester where we really drove home some impact, really started growing. Everybody was happy, everybody was succeeding. And I was just like, okay, we did something great for Cornell. And that was my goal all along, was like, how can I, just play my part and do something in my immediate community to address this issue at large. Um, but then what happened was, as anybody would, you share what you're doing and people ask you about it and kind of explain further. And what I found was that when I'm talking to university recruiters, when I'm talking to engineering leaders, when I'm talking to other students from other campuses, they all seem to really like want this. Like, it wasn't just like oh, congrats on all success. It was how can I get involved, and I was never thinking about it beyond Cornell. And so that led me to really start thinking about, okay, how can we make this bigger than Cornell? Because Carnegie Mellon needs it, MIT needs it, right? Stanford needs it. So let's give it to them, right? And so that was kind of the why now, or at least why I started thinking about it going into my senior year. But then the real push was, I had a mentor or I have a mentor currently, who is the founder of Dev Color, which a good amount of tech folks should know. They're a nonprofit community for Black software engineers, and he was the one who truly pushed me and planted the seed in me to make this a national organization and actually pursue this. We had a nice conversation at my internship last summer. He sent me this long, like paragraph after paragraph, chain of messages that night that I'll never forget, that just really showed me that somebody really sees the potential in this. And this is somebody who has been an engineer, has been successful there, and been a nonprofit founder, been successful there, and is believing that I can do something at that scale. Like, it was a no-brainer to me that like something was here that I needed to take advantage of. Um, and so that's kind of why I started it and what the timing was. I didn't plan to do it at all. It just kind of came to me. It was right under my nose. Um, and then in regards to your second question about kind of just what the process for starting the nonprofit itself, I would say that we're still in that process. I launched, but we still don't have things like a bank account, right? We still don't have, still working on our 501c3 status. So I think the toughest part has just been remembering that as a founder of any type of business, there are other things you have to think about beyond vision. And I think a lot of founders, like myself, like, I can get caught up in just the vision, the product, the mission, like all that stuff. But at the end of the day, I got to remember that, I need to comply with certain laws, and, I need to fill out certain applications, and I need to write this document and put this together. So that's been the more annoying part. But I think a couple other lessons that I've learned have just been just to be flexible and just to listen. When I first started out on this journey, we had this like ideal vision of like how we wanted to execute. We wanted, X amount of companies to commit this amount of money. And we wanted like this top tier sponsor that would just pay for everything because it's such a good mission. And after a few months, it became very clear that that was idealistic and that companies are going to contribute money from their university recruiting budget. And I learned about how tight those budgets are. And I just learned so much in like that process of approaching a conversation with my idealistic view of what should happen, and learning very quickly how the world works and how different companies work. So I had to be very flexible. It's been almost a year now, and we've changed kind of our strategy so many times. And then with COVID, we definitely had to change a lot of our initial plans to do a lot of in-person engagement and go virtual. So, it's been a wild ride, and it seems like every month there's something new that kind of takes things off the tracks. But I believe in the mission, and then I'm ready to see that vision, that long-term vision, come to reality.
So let's actually talk about the long-term vision. If you look out, let's say, a decade, or however far out you want to look is totally fine. What does Colorstack look like, and what's the impact look like? And I guess what my question is, what's the big vision, and what will it look like, in a decade or two when it's all said and done and it's like it's happened?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, my vision is to ensure that any Black or Latinx, any racially underrepresented student that attends college and wants to pursue computer science can do just that, right? Has no barriers in their way of pursuing that degree and persisting through the major. And what that looks like um, in terms of like maybe numbers and things like that, like we can reach a point where, one, we have Colorstack chapters on almost every campus across the country. Um, Retention is no longer a problem especially on the top CS at the top CS schools, and the companies that recruit from these top CS schools are no longer looking at 1% Black representation in technical roles. Maybe it's 5%. Hopefully, it's 10%. That's the type of impact that I'm trying to have. At Cornell, we're almost tripling the amount of CS graduates that are Black and Latinx, and so I want to see that kind of cascade into hires from those companies, and their numbers increasing as well.
That's a exciting vision to paint, and I think you paint it well. I've to kind of go towards the end of the podcast. I have two questions to ask. One is for about Colorstack, and the second one
Mhm.
is just overall what's going on. But they're both the same question. The question is
Yeah.
for Colorstack. Um, how can the forward-thinking founders community help you make your vision happen? How can we help? If anyone's
Right.
listening in a position to, yeah, I guess in what way are we able to help you out?
For sure. Yeah. Thank you. I think right now there's a few things. So for me as a founder, I think I need help in terms of navigating the experience of being a founder, right? Like choosing team members, and like figuring out what resources I need, help with like fundraising, and even just communication. Like, am I communicating the vision right? Like, in my head, I know exactly what Colorstack is going to do, how valuable we are. I see it day in and day out, but am I communicating that to the world? So just like founder help would be helpful right now. The second thing is we are nonprofits. So, if there is any sources of funding that we can tap into early on, that could hopefully be a long-term relationship, that is also helpful. The third thing is awareness to students. So one thing that we might have issues with is the fact that since on any given campus, the communities are so small, of Black and Latinx CS students, they might not be connected enough to even hear about Colorstack, right? And so that I worry that there's that one Black CS student at whatever school that has still yet to hear about us and is contemplating dropping their major because they have no community there. But if they would just hear about us, there would be hope. So just, kind of spreading awareness would be helpful. And then I think the last thing is if there's any technical listeners that have a technical background, just offering your contact info to add to the professional network, the Colorstack professional network. There is going to be tons of opportunities as the community grows to kind of pour into students, whether that be through mentorship, a workshop, referrals to companies, even a hire if you're running a startup or anything like that. So my vision is to build up this professional network to a point where I can tap them into our student community in a way that's valuable to them, but that doesn't intrude on our space as Black and Latinx students.
All right, very thorough ways to help. I appreciate that. And then my last question before we just get URL and contact info, if you have any,
Mhm.
is, right now is, kind of a dark time for the country and for the world.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in the streets, with the government, with our president, and it's just it's hard to watch. And I think a lot of people are asking,
Mhm.
themselves, and I sure know I am. How can we help? What is something that we can do? Whether me in particular, I'm white. I'm sure there's other white people that are wondering. There's probably Black people. There's probably every types of people just want to help. So my question for you, and I'm almost asking like personally, like me just asking you, like how can I help, and how can my listeners
Mhm.
help? How can we help with what's going on in our country and help solve these systemic problems that we're having? Because I sure don't have the answers. I don't think any single person does, but perspective is always more helpful than just screaming into a vacuum. So do you have any
Mhm.
thoughts on how the listeners can help make our country like a little better for everyone?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of thoughts around that, and I think it gets tricky. But the main way, like you said, is to ask and listen, and just be open to these different perspectives and these different experiences that we're having, while realizing that there is the potential for like a person like myself or the person that any given listener would ask might just be tired of reiterating the reality that we're going through, right? So I think you know folks that are trying to help and be allies here need to also be intentional about like going out on their own and doing their own research, right? Like all the things that are going on, there's video documentation going around on Twitter, there's books that you can read about the history of things, there's tons of articles and things like that. And I think right now is a time for education. I think this is something that I personally have been viewing for the past, ever since I can remember. I think middle school was really when I first started to see things like this. And it's good that we're all like, I think this is the most visibility police brutality and things like that has gotten in a while. But it's not new. And so I think it's time to just educate and just listen and learn about what's going on. And then what it comes down to, and what I'm currently trying to teach myself as well, is how do we actually influence that change, right, beyond the protests, right? Who are the key decision makers, and who writes what laws and who has what influence on the different areas that impact our lives, and how can I vote, how can I use my vote to make that difference? So um, there's a lot of resources going around there. But I think we all have a lot of learning to do and just figuring out how we can make that impact. But at the end of the day, if you want to stay aware of what's going on, you can follow folks like myself on social media. You can support organizations, not only like Black Lives Matter and a lot of the bail relief funds that are going around, but ongoing support of organizations that are supporting these students and these people across the country, and not only just using your money, but interacting with that group. So if we ever receive a check from Colorstack, for Colorstack, I would love, for the writer of that check to, I don't, you don't have to necessarily join our Slack workspace or anything like that, but, speak to a student, speak to me, right? Let's have that dialogue so that you can really learn and engulf yourself in the experience.
I really appreciate all of that. It's all good to think about, and it's a very healthy perspective as there's, as mentioned, everyone's, trying to figure out how to help, and I think that that's all very
Yeah.
helpful. So I appreciate that. You mentioned one thing in there regards if to follow people on Twitter, potentially you and others. For
Yeah.
the last part of the podcast, we'll love to just know, like, how can people get in touch? What is your Twitter? What is the URL for Colorstack? Do you have an email? I guess if people want to get in touch or learn more about Colorstack or you, where can they follow you?
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of Colorstack, www.colorstack.org is our website, and then Colorstack.org on Instagram and Twitter. So Colorstack.org on both of those. And then for myself, my Twitter is my first name, so JEHRONP. And my email is my first name at colorstack.org.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. I think Colorstack has an extremely exciting future, especially because it's early days. So I'll be following along and helping how I can. So thank you so much for coming on, and I wish you the best of luck with Colorstack.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this opportunity as well.